Welcome to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness, a podcast where I talk about the Constitution, history, politics, and pretty much anything else I want to talk about. And today I have someone as a guest that I've had on my radio show before. So if you haven't listened to the radio, you should go check me out Sunday nights, 9 o'clock, AM 560 in Denver. And this is a father who has spent a lot of time trying to make life better for his son in the schools that he's been in. And I think that he's the type of guy that's going to be in the crosshairs of the DOJ with their new, I don't know if it's a policy or what, but they basically seem to be on board with calling parents who speak out at school board meetings domestic terrorists, which I believe is because of a letter that was sent from a teachers union asking them to do that. And so Merrick Garland has decided to go along with that, despite some conflict of interest, which I'm going to go into on another episode. But today I wanted to talk to Greg McGough. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Annette.
He's going to share with us what he's been doing. He was on with his son, Owen, on the radio show, but he's come back because he's got a lot more to say. And I've never met a parent more involved than you are, Greg. You could probably teach a class on civil, not disobedience, but activism, although there is going to be some civil disobedience you're going to tell us about, right?
Oh, yes, very much so.
Yes. I feel like in this day and age, if you do not engage in any civil disobedience, there's something wrong with you, even if it's unknowingly or unintentionally, because the laws are becoming so ridiculous that if you are somehow obeying them all, you're either just not breathing or I don't know, because they're getting to be pretty bad. So Greg, tell us how this started and what is it? What are the highlights that you wanted to go into with us? Because you've done a lot. This is like a part-time job for you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna summarize what I've done over the years, then quickly get up to where we are right now.
All right.
But you're talking about a parent who's advocating for their child. And if you want your child to be successful in education, parents need to advocate for their child specifically. Otherwise, we're doomed to failure and we have to live with whatever our school board decides, which can be a disaster. Now, Owen has always been the smallest kid in his grade level. He physically speaking, he is shorter, lighter than all the other kids. And he was a bully magnet throughout school because of that. And so I had to advocate for him, going to teachers, to principals, to other parents. And so I've been involved, and this all started back in kindergarten was where we first got into it, but in third grade is where it really hit. Owen is now a 10th grader going to Littleton High School. And I had to deal with the bullying that led up to the school shooting and murder of Kendrick Castillo over at STEM High School. I was a big part of that, big part of showing the school or informing the school they had a cultural problem with bullying, and they dismissed me. They dismissed everything I had to say about that. 4 months later, here's what happened. Had they listened to me, would have changed things. Hard to say for certain, but it wouldn't have hurt, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's really too bad that they didn't take you seriously and take some kind of action to try to change the culture at that school.
I did not, and I was not the only parent that brought that up to the school board. There was a couple of anonymous parents that did such as well. Mm-hmm. Now, after the STEM school shooting, we had an issue where there was a lack of teachers at the STEM school. As Owen was starting his 8th grade, he spent the first 6 weeks without teachers in half of his classes. And I was in the principal's office on a daily basis saying, I'm going to be here tomorrow picking up my son from whatever class he does not have a teacher for, because having him sitting there for a study hall for half the day is ridiculous. So I took time out of my day to go and take him to lunch every day. We go out and do stuff. So I eventually got Owen into Littleton High School, or the early high school program. That's where he got to start as an 8th grader at Littleton High School. And that went well. And then the pandemic hit. And boy, this was a big problem for me, because it was a big problem for everybody. Our school systems have 100 years of the kids learning how to, well, the teachers know how to teach kids over basically 100 years of experience in our school systems. And then all of a sudden, everybody got thrust into, we're going to do virtual learning. And it was problematic at best. And I was trying to be patient and understanding that they don't have that 100 years of experience behind them. So we'll go with the flow. And but I started pointing out the flaws to it to the school board, and the school board was not happy about that. One of the things I wanted to be able to say at the school board meeting was, hey, here I am, there's issues. And by the way, having me be able to only speak over the phone is a real limitation. You need to see the expression on my face. I'd like to show you documents and things, and I can't do that just over the phone. And so we had problems with that. Myself dealing with the school board and Robert Reichert, and it was just, really fun stuff. So here we are now into the mask mandate, which started out as 2 weeks to soften the curve. Well, we all know where we are now, and that's just been absolutely ridiculous. And so going into the school year, I was excited that the kids were not going to have to wear masks. This was according to Superintendent Ewart. And then Tri-County came in and mandated it within a couple of weeks of school starting. And that just completely changed the narrative of how school goes again. We got Owen, who is now, in his third year of this pandemic lack of schooling, which, hey, that's got to affect their psychology. It affects their ability to breathe. It affects their ability to learn. It affects their ability to socialize. And lots of after-school clubs are canceled. It is not childhood as we knew it.
No.
It is much less than. All right, ask me a question or something. I'm getting lost now.
It's all right. I just want to throw in there that I'm in the schools right now. I've been subbing, and everybody's wearing masks, right? And just yesterday, I was walking down the hall, looking at these kids walking the other way, and I just thought, it's like we're being dehumanized. We can't see each other's faces, and this is a real problem. And I always, when I start the class, I have everyone take their mask down so I can see their face, and I take mine down, and we all look at each other and say, we can't go the whole day without seeing each other's faces. This is just wrong. And so I don't know. I don't understand why people who are okay with the masks don't realize what this it's a real, it's a literal barrier between us that makes it difficult to communicate with each other. Not to mention the breathing thing. It's just all a joke. And it's, to me, it's also dangerous because I had a kid yesterday that didn't want to take his mask down. He says, I'm not comfortable now without having my mask on. And I didn't say it, but I thought they're being conditioned. They're being conditioned to have them on so that it feels wrong to have them off. And I think that's a real problem. So
now let's talk about our schools being indoctrination centers, which you're talking about the conditioning, and that's largely what's happening. Now, Owen initially had to wear the mask and all that, and there was issues with that with Owen, and Owen now has a medical mask exemption. So he is not required to wear a mask at school. And to the best of my knowledge at Littleton High School, I think he's the only student, or certainly the only one that we're aware of in the entire school. And I think that really threw the school for a loop because they didn't know how to do this. In the beginning, Owen had, before he had the mask exemption, he was not doing well at keeping that mask up, and he was getting scolded and actually brought down to the principal's office and told that he was going to be losing certain privileges if he did not keep his mask on, such as after-school activities, and that eventually he would be relegated to being suspended and online learning and that type of thing, and if it came down to that. So it was shortly after that that the medical mask exemption came about. Now, this is where we're trying to get back into the socialization of school and being able to see kids' faces. And it's problematic because there's many kids that look at Owen and say, why are you not wearing a mask? He actually hasn't told anybody that he has a medical mask exemption. So there's many kids that think he is just, a tough guy that's disregarding the rules of the school at this point, which he's not at all. But nobody's even asking him if he has a medical mask exemption. I believe one child so far has. So it's kind of this well-kept secret at school. Now, one of the things Owen did to try and get back into social activities at school is Owen is an accomplished young filmmaker for short films. And he started a film club at the school, and it's school sponsored. He found a teacher that would sponsor the event. And the teacher is not there to teach filmmaking at all. They're just there as a, for all intent, a babysitter. They are the sponsor of the club. They're in the room at the time it's happening. So the kids are meeting at the school, and they're talking about what positions they're going to play in terms of acting versus learning how to act and how to speak and what props might be needed and who's going to be crew in terms of lighting or or audio or video. And they're going over all this. They're also determining a location for the film and also writing a script. And somewhere along the line, the supervisor for this particular film club said, well, you're going to have to wear masks if you film it in the school. Okay, well, this is a video. Doing masks is just not appropriate for doing video. So they decided they were going to film this off-site. And the site they chose was a church, and is actually the church that I go to, and it's in the process of being sold. But the church is largely vacant, but it's still a perfectly operational building. And so the kids had planned to do this on a Saturday evening. Their first filming was actually last Saturday evening. The second night of filming is going to be tonight. And initially the teacher said, well, in order for you to do this, I'm going to have to go with you because it's a school-sponsored club. They said, okay, well, then we'll have the filming portion of this be a separate club. We came here and we planned it, so forth, but hey, we'll do it. They said, well, since you're doing it off-site, I guess I don't need to come, and you're all good. You can go film this thing off-site, and you don't have to worry about masks because you're not in the school building. It's not during school hours and so forth. So, okay. 2 days later, Owen was called into the vice principal's office. This is Liz Lindley, vice principal, Littleton High School. And Owen was not questioned. Owen was informed. Your film school is canceled. Film club is canceled. There was no explanation as to why, although we can all see between the lines. The school wanted the kids to wear masks. Mm-hmm. And the kids did not want to wear masks for making a movie. And by the way, the movie they're making is a horror film, and it's for an event at the school called Spooktacular.
Ah, right.
And it's somewhere up near Halloween, where they're going to be showing several short films that various student groups are making in order for the Spooktacular. And so at any rate, Owen was informed that film club was canceled. He was actually pulled out of his class, brought down to the principal's office for this. And later that afternoon, the principal sent out an email to all of the parents of the students that were in film club to tell them that the group was planning on filming at a vacant church against the advice of the supervisor of the film club. And it basically threw fear in it. It was, this has got to be unsafe.
Right.
Now, I mentioned that the supervisor of the film club, or the sponsor, she was not actually part of anything. She was just in the classroom to, monitor the kids and make sure they're not, breaking out knives and guns and so forth, right? Mm-hmm. So she was not a part of this planning or anything. Her whole decision was based upon what she overheard a couple of kids say about how they were going to do this at a church and how the actors were not going to be wearing masks during the filming. Mm-hmm. So it was canceled. And at that point, I said, Owen, they can't stop you from making a film, period, end of discussion. So call up the kids and see who wants to still do it and go do it. Mm-hmm. They can't even stop you from meeting at the church. You guys can gather as a group of kids in the library any day you want to after school and talk about this stuff. You have to wear masks while you're at the school, but you can do whatever you want outside of school. They cannot stop it. Well, it was kind of too late in many respects because many of the kids' parents got that and thought, ooh, this is unsafe.
Oh, gosh.
Because the school knows better than anybody else.
Right.
I sent an email to the vice principal saying this was ridiculous. You overstepped your bounds. Mm-hmm. Because not only did you cancel the film club, but you did so with a total lack of information. You could have contacted Owen and said, Owen, tell me about this venue. You could have contacted me as the parent, as I could have told you about the venue. I could have even put you in touch with the pastor of the church, and he could have told you about the venue. But you did none of that. You just summarily canceled the entire film club and did it via fear. So my question now is, why is there a double standard according to the school on this film club? They have a different set of rules. And I'm going to give you two examples. The first one is Owen belongs to the cross-country team. And the cross-country team, every time they have an event, like they did today, they had a cross-country meet today over at Englewood High School. And on the evening before a cross-country meet, all of the students from that club meet at one of these students' homes for a spaghetti dinner. It's a tradition. Mm-hmm. There is nobody from the school there. There is no district employee that shows up for this. It is a bunch of students meeting, and the coaches aren't even there. There's a bunch of students meeting at a parent's at their parents' home for a spaghetti dinner. And there's nobody there to enforce masks or tell them they have to wear them or not wear them or anything of the sort. And that's the first club. The second one is Owen belongs to Technology Student Association. It's also known as a TSA club. And it's a bunch of scientific projects mostly where some of them are led by single students just doing a project. Most of them are group-based projects. And because the group meets in the mornings, on Friday mornings at Littleton High School for about a half an hour, there's not enough time to actually complete the projects. It's just planning. And what happens is the students meet after school at kids' homes to, do the films, do the research project, the science experiments, whatever the case might be. And again, there's no district employees that are showing up at the students' homes to make sure they're wearing masks or doing anything of the sort. There is no question of safety. It is just assumed these kids know what they're doing for these school-sponsored clubs, and they're allowed to do it. But yet, for film club, the school apparently decided that it is within their purview to follow the kids from school after hours to their home or church and say, you can't do this. You are not abiding by the school rules or the Tri-County Health Department where you have to wear a mask for a school activity. Well, I'm sorry, either apply it to all or apply it to none. Now, personally, why do I think this is happening? I think it's because Owen has a medical mask exemption. Owen has talked to the school board on numerous occasions about how much he'd like to see the mask mandate go away and rather have it be mask choice. And he's also spoken at the Arapahoe County Commissioners Board meeting. So Owen has been very vocal about this. And I believe that the school at this point is doing overreach. They're doing discrimination. They're violating freedom of speech. This is my opinion on what's happening here. And I plan on bringing this to the school board and to the Arapahoe County Commissioners this week during 2 different public comment sessions.
So I want to know, did the vice principal respond to your email about this?
The vice principal said, thank you for your concerns and comments. Have a nice day. Now, I'm not speaking verbatim, but she offered up no explanation. She offered up no solution. She just said, I hope the film club can come back into being again, but did not address any of my concerns about why it was canceled in the first place. Nothing.
So it's a control thing. It's just basically like you're not going to tell us no. You're not going to thumb your noses at our mask mandate.
Now, here's another thing that happened, because we're talking about control and why I think that myself and Owen are being targeted, as we talked about this, and we'll get to Merrick Garland in a few minutes. But back on September 9th, there was a school board meeting, Littleton Public School District. And this was the first one after the mask mandate that was put in place by Tri-County Health. And that mask mandate applied to schools. It didn't apply to school boards or school board meetings. That would be ridiculous. So we show up the night before the meeting. Owen and I signed up to speak as public comment at this board meeting. And later on that evening, or it might have been the next day, the school board sent out an email to everybody that signed up and said, because a student is speaking at the school board meeting, everybody will have to wear a mask. And so Owen and I got there. So I thought that was absolutely ridiculous because, in my opinion, the Tri-County Health Order does not apply to a school board meeting. That is silly.
Yeah.
Because it's not a school setting, it's a school board meeting. But anyway, Owen and I showed up at the meeting early, and we talked to the various parents that were there, and we said, hey, how about we do this? The kids, anybody with kids, just stay outside with your kids until the public comment section part starts, which is about a half an hour into the meeting. And once it starts, kids will come in, they'll tell us we have to put on masks, and let's refuse. Let's do civil disobedience.
Civil disobedience, yes.
And here we were, and that's exactly what happened. And this thing got more interesting because, when the public comment started, I just sent Owen a message, said, Owen, come on in with the kids. And so they all came in, and the president, I don't remember whether it was Brian Ewert, the superintendent, or the president of the school board, was claiming, okay, everybody has to mask up now. And there was a group of us parents, probably 15 of us, that were just sitting there silent and not putting on masks. And I can tell you that infuriated the school board. Everybody up on that panel was just looking at us like, well, you have to put one on. And I finally stood up and said, I respectfully decline to put on a mask. And I will not do so unless I'm instructed to by law enforcement and escorted out. And at that point, a Littleton police officer walked over and said, "Sir, you're going to have to leave." I said, "Okay." I got up, and they only escorted me out of the boardroom and into the hallway, which is right next to the boardroom. And the rest of the parents, oh, it was like a melee in there. And it was just, I found it funny to watch. Meanwhile, Superintendent Brian Ewert is talking about how, and this is where it got really good, where this turned into national news, because the superintendent Ewert is looking at the group of people, the parents that were not putting on masks, and started making a statement. I can't speak verbatim to it, but I'm going to try my best, that the school board and the administration and the teachers can be held criminally liable because the people are not wearing masks.
So that's where this whole thing started here in Colorado, with the whole thing that made it to Fox News and everything, saying that teachers can become criminally liable for not enforcing the mask mandate on the students.
And that was Superintendent Brian Ewert looking at myself, Owen, and that group of parents that were being civil disobedient when he uttered those words.
That's hilarious. That's awesome. Yeah, because now Tri-County has denied that. They've issued their own statement saying, "Oh, well, of course we're you're not going to be criminally liable." But the fact that a superintendent would say that, and probably off the cuff, because I doubted he was planning on saying that.
I think he was flustered, and I think he misspoke. I don't think he was trying to lie to the people and tell them that about criminal liability. I think he got flustered and just misspoke. But
he was trying to exert control, because this whole thing, to me, especially like Biden's vaccine mandate, it's all a control play, all of it. And so when parents stand up and say in mass and say, "We're not going to do it," then the superintendent doesn't know what to do. It starts freaking out, right? I want to know if any of the other parents put their masks on or not.
During that meeting?
Yeah.
What we did was we had the kids, when the public comments started to go, at some point, the parents were forced to put on their masks or leave the room. And leave the room just meant go into the hallway right behind it, which big double doors on both sides. You can look right in. It's not like you're missing the meeting. You just don't have a chair to sit in. So all the parents came out there as long as there were children inside the boardroom. Eventually, the children got bored in the boardroom. And so they came out into the hallway, and parents went in there unmasked. Now, let's fast forward to 2 weeks later, which was the next school board meeting. So at that point, I think the school district was a little bit scared about what was going on. So when Owen and I arrived at the school board meeting, we got there a few minutes early, and the head of Littleton Public School District Security was standing at the door, and rather than the door being unlocked and people can just go in at will, it was locked, and he had his key card and was letting people in based upon
mask or no mask.
Mask or no mask. So he stopped Owen and I outside in front of a group of people, and he said, "Everybody is going to be required to wear masks because Owen is going to be in there, although Owen doesn't have to wear one because he has a mask exemption." And I said, "Pardon me, come over here." And I pulled him aside and I kind of ripped him a new one and said, "The fact that Owen has a medical mask exemption is not your story to tell to any group of people, period. End of discussion." "Oh, yes, I can. Yes, I can." I said, "Like hell you can. You just need to learn your place. This is not your place to do this." So once we got past that, and he actually apologized later on for it. But we go back to go in. He says, "Well, everybody's going to have to wear a mask when you go in today. It's been decided by the superintendent." I said, "The superintendent cannot arbitrarily make such a rule." I said, "According to the rules, the Tri-County Health Department has said that if there is a child present, that masks have to be worn. And the kids are going to wait outside here for the time being. And I've already cleared this with all the other parents. And so parents are coming in, and they're coming in without masks." And he says, "No, you can't do that. I've already, the superintendent made that decision. This is the way it's going to be." And I said, "Well, you can call the police over and have me arrested right now, because you cannot arbitrarily make those decisions. It is a public building, a public venue, and a public meeting." So He says, well, let me go talk to the superintendent. He comes out 5 minutes later and says, okay, he decided that you don't have to wear masks inside the building.
Can I
So
just say, like, I'm really impressed with the fact that you just kept pressing and pressing and pressing and pressing, because I think probably 90% of us would have given up at the beginning, and then the rest might have given up after the second time he said no. So I'm really impressed that you kept your foot down and just stood your ground and stood your ground and stood your ground.
I have no more fear anymore.
That's
I get tired of people telling me what I can't do. And that's just ridiculous.
Well, and to stay
So
calm about it and to stay logical about it and not, get emotional or start cursing or anything like that. I mean, you said hell, but that was all right. But I like the fact that you're able to do that. It makes me think that more of us parents need to have some kind of training in this sort of thing, because most of us on the right, we did not grow up with the attitude of I'm going to disobey any rules or I'm going to question rules. We're kind of rule followers, right? As opposed to people on the left who kind of grew up with, they protest. I mean, the 60s and the 70s are, nothing but protests from the left, but not from the right. So we are not conditioned to question things. We're conditioned to kind of go along and respect authority. So all of a sudden, when we have not authority, but authoritarianism over the last year and a half, a lot of us are like, what? We don't know what to do. We're a bit flummoxed. Flummoxed, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. And so we need someone like you to tell us to keep pressing and to keep our foot down when we know we're in the right.
at this second board meeting, I told you in the first board meeting, a Littleton police officer escorted me out of the boardroom. And this time around, they had not one, but 3 Littleton police officers at this meeting. They were expecting trouble.
Well, and you know what? That's okay. I mean, it's not cool, but at least those are local cops, right? The fact that Merrick Garland wants to have federal officers come to some of these board meetings or come to your house, to me says, no, that's extremely scary to have the federal government stuff. Why wouldn't you have just a sheriff, or a local police officer if they think they need that?
I think I'm going to be considered a domestic terrorist based upon the letter. And by the way, I unfortunately need to correct you from the beginning. It was the National Association of School Boards that sent the letter to Joseph Biden.
It was not student or teachers unions.
It was the National Association of School Boards that sent that letter to the president. And then the president sent a memo to Merrick Garland saying, you need to look into this. And then Merrick Garland made his edict. All right, ask me other questions. I lost.
So you had 3, there were 3 officers that showed up this next time around.
Correct.
Board meeting.
And so I've heard about board meetings, and not necessarily the Littleton Public School District board meeting, but other board meetings where you're not allowed to clap. They consider it intimidating.
Yes. That is what happened at our Douglas County School Board meeting. And I watched that one online, and I spoke from my house because there were like 80 people signed up to speak at that meeting. And that's where we were all cut down to 2 minutes. But yeah, what's his bucket? President Ray. Oh, I can't stand that man. He
David Ray. Oh, yay.
Yeah, he just drips with condescension, not condensation. That is dripping as well. But he's very condescending, right? It's just oogie. But he said that anyone standing up, because a lot of the parents would stand up after someone was making a point that they liked, and he didn't like that either. He thought that was too intimidating. So he kept telling them, we're going to have to stop this meeting if you keep doing things like that. So apparently standing up or clapping was it was making people feel afraid. So the school board needed their safe space, right? I mean, it was just pathetic.
My advice to the parents on that, and I've actually posted things about this, is I don't care if they're offended by you standing or clapping. Stand up, clap, do everything you want. You be a parent. It doesn't matter what they think the rules are going to be. They cannot arbitrarily make rules like this, period. And if they want to try it, great. We're going to bring in the news. Let's make national news on this.
Yes.
Let's make it known. Every night at 6 o'clock, guess what myself and other civil disobedient parents are doing? Well, we'll show you. I'm more than happy to. I consider it my right as an American citizen to walk into that school board meeting and say, You guys are a bunch of frickin' morons. It is my right to say that. And if they want to consider me a domestic terrorist because of it, bring on the FBI. I'm waiting.
All right. So do you have an attorney on retainer at this
I
point?
do not. I can't afford an attorney.
No, but you may want to think on, I mean, on a total serious note, you may want to think about having one that you can get a hold of quickly in the event that you need to. I have one. I have an attorney friend. I'm an attorney, but I'm not practicing right now. But I have one that I can message quickly if I need to, because I think I mentioned this on the radio show, but I think at some point, many of us are going to end up becoming arrested, even if we're not kept. But I think many of us will be arrested at some point if things continue the way they are right now. And let's just hope it's local cops and not, the fibbies, because that's.
Oh, I have a good friend of mine that I have two people on the hook to take care of Owen should I end up in jail over this.
Well, there you go. I have
One of them is a good friend of mine, and the other one is the pastor of my church, who is my best friend.
That's right.
And
Because
so
you're a single dad, right? So
I am a single dad. That is correct.
you got to think about Owen.
But
I'm divorced, so their dad could take my girls if something like that happens, or my mom. But you're right. We have to start thinking along those lines of what if I did end up in jail, and as a political prisoner. That's something that I never would have thought I would say in living in this country. But we have someone in prison right now from the January 6th event. It's not insurrection. That's totally wrong. But we have someone in jail right now for what they're calling a misdemeanor. But they're sitting there now, actually prison at this point, because it's been, I don't know how many months, several. So yeah, I think we're all going to have to get used to the idea that we may end up arrested and ready with the plan in case that happens.
well, we have to fight back because there's just look at the vaccines as an example. On the vaccines, they have made it incredibly difficult for anybody to not get the vaccine.
Yeah.
And this is overreach on their part. And so the parents say, well, I have to do it because I need to work, I need to feed my family. And there's all these reasons why they're making it difficult for us.
Mm-hmm.
So the same thing with schools and the mask is not everybody can afford to take their kids out of school. So what is it we're going to do to fight back? Because sitting around on Facebook and saying, well, gee, this sucks, that's not going to get the job done.
Yeah.
Going around the street corners holding up masks, I don't think that's going to get the job done either. It's time to fight back. And personally, I'm all for civil disobedience.
Awesome. Well, you're an inspiration. I really do hope that you don't end up being arrested or anything. But if you do, I'm going to be talking about it on my radio, and we're going to make a big stink about it because that's the other thing. Like you said, let's end up on the news. Let's all, while we still have a First Amendment, let's all take advantage of it to the fullest extent that we can. That's one of the things that I'm concerned about, that eventually we're going to be shut down. And I think that's what this whole push by the NASB to call us domestic terrorists is to shut us up. And so we cannot do that. So
incredible overreach on the government's part.
Oh,
and I am all for peaceful protesting, and I consider civil disobedience to be peaceful protesting. But don't confuse peaceful protesting with my having to be nice. I do not have to be nice. If they're going to make our kids' childhood difficult, I'm going to make their lives difficult in board meetings, period.
Awesome. High five. All right. Well, Greg, thank you for coming on. And honestly, I hope that a lot of people take heart and are inspired by this and are not afraid to do this. I'm going to share this on Facebook and I'll tag you. So are you okay with people reach out to you on Facebook and ask you for tips on how to be more brave with this kind of stuff?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Greg. Any last words?
Thank you, Annette.
We shut this down. You're all good. All right. All right, people. I hate that we're at this point in history, but we are. I had a lady on my radio show that she's going to be coming up in a week from, well, right around the time this drops. A lady from the former Soviet Union, and she and other people I've talked to from communist countries, they see a pattern emerging here that scares them. The only way we're going to stop this before it gets there is by doing the things like Greg is doing and standing up for ourselves. Because if we don't do it now, we don't stand up now, our kids aren't going to be able to stand up. So I encourage you to follow suit. And I'm going to try myself to be more brave and not just bend with the first no. I'm going to keep going past that first no. So thank you all for listening to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness, where freedom lovers gather.